At 7:45 p.m., fire burst out of a wooden escalator at King's Cross Underground Station and swept across the ticket hall. 31 people died. 2 minutes earlier, experienced firefighters had described the visible flames as no larger than a burning cardboard box. Same escalator, same fire, just 2 minutes. The question is not how a match started it. The question is what changed beneath the steps. The answer was hidden inside a machine built from timber, coated by decades of use and shaped like a long, inclined channel. Rewind 20 minutes. A lighted match falls through a gap beside escalator 4, and the disaster begins where nobody can see it. On the evening of November 18th, 1987, King's Cross was one of London's busiest interchanges, with passengers moving through 5 underground levels. Escalator 4 carried people up from the Piccadilly line. It was 17 meters long, built on a 30-degree slope and installed in 1939. To a passenger, it was simply a moving staircase. Beneath the visible steps sat rollers, chains, timber boards, and narrow ledges almost impossible to inspect from above. Each wooden step rode on small wheels beside a link chain. The whole assembly travelled through a timber-sided shaft before folding back underneath. Lubricating oil and grease collected around the moving parts. So did fluff, scraps of paper, ticket fragments, and other rubbish carried in from the station. Fire cleats were meant to stop burning material sliding down the slope. On this escalator, almost 1 in 3 was missing, leaving open paths beside the steps. The inquiry concluded that a smoker probably dropped a match. It slipped through one of those gaps and landed in the greasy debris below. Cleaning crews could reach the exposed surfaces. They could not completely clean the concealed channels where grease, dust, and rubbish had been accumulating. At 7:29, a passenger reported a fire. Staff found flames only a few inches high and began dealing with what looked like a familiar nuisance. That judgment had history behind it. London Underground had recorded more than 400 escalator fires, usually small, smoky, and extinguished without anyone being killed. 46 of those fires had been serious enough to record in detail. 32 were believed to have been caused by smokers. None had become a mass casualty disaster. Investigators later found old burn marks beneath Escalator 4 itself. Small fires had already entered the same hidden space and gone out. Repeated warnings had taught the organization the wrong lesson. Because earlier fires stayed small, another small fire felt routine, even when nobody could see its full extent. Station staff had no proper evacuation plan and little training for an escalator fire. Their view beneath the moving steps was severely restricted. The station radio system did not work reliably below ground. Information moved by runners and telephone calls while passengers continued towards the ticket hall above. Under the steps, the match ignited a shallow bed of paper, fluff, and grease. At first, the fire behaved exactly as everyone expected. Heat softened the old lubricant. It soaked into the nearby timber and debris, giving the fire more fuel than the small visible flame suggested. The escalator was still moving. Burning material and heated components traveled through the mechanism, spreading heat beyond the point where the match had landed. Wood beside the fire warmed without yet producing large flames. Energy was being stored inside the escalator, while the ticket hall saw only smoke and a modest glow. This was the trap. The visible fire remained small, while the concealed structure around it became hotter, drier, and ready to release flammable gases. Water fog equipment was available, but staff did not use it before the flashover. No water reached the seat of the fire during those crucial minutes. Firefighters reached the station at about 7:42. They saw a fire that still appeared limited and began moving people away from the Piccadilly line escalators. At 7:43, the officer in charge compared it to a cardboard box burning. Beneath him, both sides of the inclined channel were already involved. Now the geometry of the escalator began to matter. An ordinary flame rises because hot gases are lighter than the cooler air around them. But this fire sat inside a narrow channel tilted towards the ticket hall. Timber walls and the undersides of the steps trapped the rising heat. As flames spread across the full width of the channel, fresh air could no longer reach them evenly from every side. The air entered mainly from below. The flame bent into the flow, lying down along the escalator instead of lifting harmlessly towards the ceiling. That flattened flame swept hot gases directly over more wooden surface. Each newly heated section released more fuel into the same confined stream. The faster the gases moved, the more timber they heated. The more timber they heated, the faster and hotter the fire became. A self-feeding loop had formed. Heat, airflow, and the escalator's slope were now working together, turning the machine into a fire channel. As combustion intensified, the flame burned more cleanly and became harder to read from above. Less smoke did not mean less danger. At the top, the stream of flame struck the underside of the ticket hall. It divided, rolled across the ceiling, and ignited material in its path. At 7:45, the fire erupted into the ticket hall. People who had seconds earlier been standing near a small escalator fire were engulfed by heat and flame. 31 people died. The fire had not suddenly found new fuel. It had finally revealed the energy stored out of sight beneath their feet. The emergency response had been built for the fires London Underground thought it understood. It was not built for a hidden mechanism that could change state in minutes. Staff lacked a practiced evacuation plan. Fire brigade radios failed underground, and the command structure had no complete picture of the station. Some passengers were directed towards the very ticket hall the fire was about to enter. No water had yet been applied to the concealed seat of the blaze. Firefighters had only about 3 minutes at the scene before the eruption. Their visible evidence suggested one kind of fire, while the escalator was creating another. This was not one careless act followed by one bad decision. It was a chain of accepted conditions, each made ordinary by the absence of an earlier disaster. Internal warnings had already raised concerns about cleaning, fire detection, and suppression. Proposals existed, but they had not become a complete working safeguard. The warning was present in fragments, old scorch marks, hundreds of fires, inaccessible dirt and equipment that was difficult to use. Nobody owned the whole pattern. Even after the fire, scientists initially disagreed about the sudden change. Investigators rebuilt the escalator channel and repeated the conditions at full scale. The tests reproduced the trench effect. The inquiry then issued 157 recommendations, reaching far beyond one escalator or one station. Wooden escalators were replaced or stripped of combustible components. Concealed spaces became part of the cleaning and inspection regime, not an invisible gap between departments. Heat and smoke detection were expanded. Suppression systems were made easier to operate, and the places most likely to hide fire were treated as active hazards. Emergency plans, staff training, and communications were strengthened. Evacuation could no longer depend on improvised messages moving through a station already filling with smoke. New rules for underground stations brought construction, detection, evacuation, and fire response into one safety system. The lesson was organizational as much as mechanical. A warning is not only a dramatic near miss. Sometimes it is a routine fault, repeated so often that the organization stops asking what would make the next one different. If this reconstruction changed how you see ordinary failures, subscribe to Built on Warnings. The next dossier follows another disaster whose evidence arrived before the event. Every safeguard begins as evidence someone could have ignored. At King's Cross, the evidence was there. It was simply hidden beneath the steps.